On the mic with us today is Akima A. Brown. Akima is the powerhouse founder of Reels Family for Change, a nonprofit on a mission to make the film industry more inclusive and supportive for families.
The scariest thing about starting Real Families for Change, I think for me, was this idea that I would not be seen as a serious filmmaker, that people wouldn't understand that I am doing this because I represent the epitome of the need in the industry.
In this conversation, Akima A. Brown shares her journey as a filmmaker and mother, discussing the challenges faced by parents in the film industry. This is Rise and Thrive with Ms. Monday. I'm your host, a photographer, filmmaker, and artist devoted to telling stories of brave souls who are standing up, speaking truth, and building something better. My podcast is independently created and powered by passion, just my soul connecting with your soul. If something here moves you on the show, I'd be honored if you'd like, subscribe, and share it. Your support fuels this movement, and it means more than you know, so thank you. Thank you for listening. Hey, Akima, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So the film industry often gets a super glamorized reputation, and from behind the scenes, people like you and I, we know the reality is far from it. Your journey hasn't been easy, and as a filmmaker and a mother, you faced some unique challenges. What happened to you, Akima, that made you say, I got to change this industry? and why is this mission, I guess, so deeply personal to you?
Oh, I love that question so much. So first of all, I think it's important to note that I've always been creative adjacent. I come from a family of what I call the weekend warriors. You know, they worked the 9 to 5, and then they were doing the creative thing on the weekend. So dance, music, bands, all these different kinds of things, acting. And so I had never seen this creative space held as a career. And when I found out that I was going to have my son, I actually did it a bit backwards. I left education and I said, I'm going to go and do the thing I love to do. I want my son to see me doing the thing I love to do. And was very naive. I started off working with folks who were very family-centered and were very connected to this idea of care, and then went on a job without them, and the experience was entirely different. I was told that I couldn't work a flexible schedule. We had daycare schedules and school schedules, and I was told I couldn't work a flex schedule. I was told I needed to be in the office. I was told my son could play under my desk, and I was like, I don't think that's appropriate. I don't think that's the thing you're supposed to do. And it just really got me thinking, how many other parents are experiencing this? And why aren't people understanding that so many of us are parents and caregivers? Like, what's missing here? And so it just got me thinking, I want to be able to work in an industry that I love, doing this thing that I love. And my son, who sees me doing this thing that I love, also wants to do this thing that I love and he loves now. And I was like, I want this to be something that we can actually do without having to sacrifice our lives, right? And so making a livelihood while also making a life is so important. And it just got me thinking about it and started me down the path to how can we make it happen.
That's so funny. Anyone that's listening right now that is a mother, being told that you can just bring your son to work and work under your desk, that does not work.
Not at all.
Especially with a young child.
Yeah.
And yeah, that does not work. Maybe when they're like a teenager and they're like doing their own thing on the side. But even then, that's just crazy. So starting Reels Family for Change.
Yes.
Was a bold move, because this industry has been operating like this for a very, very long time. What do you think was the scariest part, and what keeps you, I guess, motivated every day? Because I'm sure you hit a lot of roadblocks constantly.
Oh wow, you're asking really awesome questions. The scariest thing about starting Real Families for Change, I think for me, was this idea that I would not be seen as a serious filmmaker, that
Mm,
people wouldn't understand that I am doing this because I represent the epitome of the need in the industry, not,
mm,
I would be seen simply as an advocate. I think, as you know, working in this industry, network is everything,
mhm,
perception is everything. And so I think the scariest part was if people don't recognize that I am a filmmaker looking to make change around the way that we make films, then they're going to kind of not take me seriously. What has been keeping me going, though, is I'm finding there's a community of so many others who are beginning to take care. They're beginning to see care as a key component to production. And so I'm not alone now in having these conversations. A very optimistic advocate for the industry. People are going, oh, no, we actually do as practitioners need to embody these changes. And so having other practitioners who see this and value this as well, it definitely keeps me going because you are absolutely right about the hardships and the roadblocks. They are very much out there, but the community is what I think really keeps me going from day to day.
that's great. Now, as a filmmaker myself, I definitely understand. I see both sides of this, right? I'm a producer, so that's my role. And I also direct and I do for stills on set. But as a producer, I understand that budgets can be really tight on set and every minute is crucial. And just for the listener to understand, it's kind of like going to war. Like soldiers don't sleep. And that's what happens when a film starts. And you're looking at like 3 weeks to like 40 plus days. And your hours on average for crew is like you show up, say it's a 5 a.m. call time. You're lucky if you wrap at 11, and sometimes it's going to like 2 in the morning, and that's the crew. Actors do get a little less on time on set because we obviously, you want to make sure the actors as fresh, but the
Yes.
crew are like the soldiers. Now listen, the reason why we work like that is because you're spending, producers sometimes have like budgets of like $100,000 days, and they need every penny to count, right? Because there's a huge team behind the scenes. There's all this happening, and that's why these hours can be quite crazy. But for someone like you who works in the office, your hours are a little less, but still it can still be very challenging, right? So where do we find the balance? Because what is the solution? Because obviously, as a producer, you're listening to this going, I don't know how we're going to bring care or daycare to a set. And how are we going to make any of these small changes? But where do you think we can both have a significant positive impact for both the workers and I guess the producers? Like, where do we start? I don't
Yeah,
know.
no, I mean
Yeah.
it's a huge question and it's a valid
Hmm.
question. And I will say when I first started, I was working in casting, and so my work was predominantly in the office, but I have since really leaned into independent producing, and partially because I
Mm,
get to create the systems that I'm saying
hmm.
and seeing work. Um,
Mm,
and so I think the very first thing is really priority.
mm,
It doesn't always have to be as big as childcare on set, right? I know folks who do something called a name board on their sets just to ensure that there is a certain level of equality throughout the crew. And when they do that name board, it has the person's picture, their name, their title, food allergies, little things, and a fun fact about them, something to help the crew connect. But it's also an opportunity to ensure that people know who they should be talking to in the event that something happens, right? And so when we talk about care, it isn't only about child care or elder care. It's also about the way we engage each other. And so
mm,
that really is the place to start. That's how we
mhm,
start. That's the very cornerstone of the infrastructure is how do we address power on set?
mm,
Because as we look at how we address power on set, that then does negotiate into what are we prioritizing in terms of our time and money. And what does that look like? Who gets to have a say, right? And that's how you actually figure out what does need to be resourced and what we do need to pay for. So I think that's the very first, like if we need a place to start, I always say start with the power conversation, talk about the power dynamics, talk about who has access to decision making and input on the set. And that's a great place to start. And then when we talk about care on set and these other things, I actually know, and we do have case studies at RFC that show productions that had, $100,000 give or take, and still managed to figure out childcare, still managed to figure out flexible days, still managed to figure out shorter hours on set. And what we do find is that when you're prioritizing the care of your crew, when you're making sure that they do feel seen and heard and validated, they actually will show up and give you more, and often in less time. So it's been really interesting to see how that dynamic plays out. You start to find that people get really creative in their problem solving capacity and how they show up and what they're able to bring to set. And that has been helpful with regards to childcare and even addressing the liability issues. And I mean, it becomes a beautiful, just a beautiful harmonious symphony of solutions because you are hearing from more people. And I think a lot of times, when we bottleneck the decision-making process and the power dynamic, that actually is the biggest thing that cuts us off from being able to achieve the care on set that we're looking for.
Well, as a producer, you hire one crew, right? And they're there every day, like your soldiers. If you compare it to, say, like the service industry, which also works into the evenings, like nightclubs, restaurants, there's usually shift work. Right? You have, you have the crew that works the day shift, and then you have the night shift. When you go to a restaurant, you don't say, okay, I'm going to hire you. You have to work from 8 a.m. until 2 a.m. But that doesn't happen in film. And so we need to do that. Like we should have, give moms like, hey, if you, really need to be at 6 o'clock to go pick up your son at daycare, you can do the morning shift, like a normal person would in any industry, right? But then why are we making them stay from the morning to night? And we're like, these crew, like I know I've, as one myself, like by the end of your like 40 days or your 30 days or 20 days, whatever the film size or budget, you're tired, like you're exhausted because you're getting 4 hours sleep, 4 hours at night, and you're driving home at night too. Like half the time I'm like, if I'm producing a project, I'm like, guys, be careful, drive safe. People are tired and you're lifting gear, like the guys especially. And I know it's like, it's always that risk, like is someone going to get in an accident, especially near the end of the film. So, wow. Like, so I love what you're doing. And I think there's definitely a space for this.
Thank you. Yeah. And I want to interject really quickly and just say, like, for those of you who are listening, the equivalent of shift work in the production space really is job sharing, right? It really is about how do we bring on enough people to be able to delegate the workload and share the workload in a way where we can say these two people are sharing some form of responsibility, overlapping responsibility in a way where when one person steps off, the other can step on, or we have a flex time option where this one person can split the duties from, point A to point B. I was very fortunate later on that I having had the negative experiences that I had, was really able to advocate for myself and, negotiate myself into flex time where I could split my shift. I worked during the day, casting in the office on site, and then I'd go pick up my son, go home, make sure he was good, go to bed, and then I would clock back in and do some more in the evening. And so job sharing, flex time, like these things are great and they need to exist because, sleep deprivation is a number one killer in so many different ways, in the way it affects our bodies, in the way it affects our performance and operations. Accidents are more likely to happen when we're sleep deprived, all of these different things. And so being able to have people who can share in the load and ensure well-being, both physical, mental, is key, and it's critical. And it doesn't cost as much as people think. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It may cost you in a little bit of time, right? And that might cost you just a little more money, and what you save in liability, insurance claims, injury, and all of these different things is monumental in comparison to the pennies that you spend to put those things in place.
I love it. You've also been a very supportive in how we care for mothers in film. I know we talked a bit about it a little bit earlier, but I want to just go a little bit deeper into that. The film hours are long hours now for moms, and I like that idea of shift change. But as a mom with a young child, how do you think that would look like on set?
So there are multiple tiers of engagement for actual child care provision on set, and provision in two different senses. And the one that we actually have people who are on site, who are trained providers and can ensure that the children are looked after. But then also what we have found to be very effective are childcare subsidies. And so many people do have extended family, or, they do have service providers that they work with and trust. And a lot of it is just about the covering of cost. And so being able to ensure within your budget that you are building out for childcare on set. We've actually built out a multimodal system where there's long-term care for the children who are younger and will be on set all day, versus drop-off points for children who are of school age. And so the bus would come and there'd be before and after school care, very similar to how you would do often at the school, but the site is where production is. We've also talked about, traveling care units where it's not on site, but it's near site, so that, with trailers and different things, so that we still have the same kind of system going, but you may be on location. You may not be on a soundstage where you're working in the same place every day. And so how does it look for those things to move? And we have a number of providers in our network who actually do offer those kinds of services where they are moving around. And so for us, it looks like creating an ecosystem where you have both your actual service providers, but then you also have your subsidized options for supporting systems people may already have in place for their care.
I love it. So, Akima, you've already made a significant, dent with your charity, I guess you could say. Can you share with our listeners some of the wins that you've had so far?
Oh, absolutely. Oh my gosh. So I will do my best to be brief, because a great deal of our impact has really been in the education of our coalition partners, in seeing producers practice many of these interventions and solutions that we have put forth. We did a survey during the pandemic, or just right toward the end of the pandemic, and put out a report. And in that report, it highlighted what some of the biggest challenges have been to filmmakers with families, and then also what some of the proposed best practices are, what people said that they wanted to see. And then we worked with data scientists and business operations specialists to build out what it would look like in practice, and then actually had producers pilot some of those on their set and say, this works, this not so much, let's do this thing. So that has been a huge win. We have been able to stand on major platforms, both in Canada and in the US, and share this information and talk about what it looks like in practice and what the potential could be moving forward. And our biggest win to date, or most recent win to date, is that we are talking with international film commissions, as well as some studio execs, to figure out what it could look like to really standardize these practices across the board. So those are huge wins. Our desire is to see this become something that, no matter where you go in the world, care is centered on your production. People are taken care of emotionally, psychologically, physically. There is a culture of care and safety, and it's not something that happens in pockets when someone thinks about it or has had an experience that incites that. Instead, it really is something that is just the norm and the expectation, and to not do it is the anomaly.
I love it. I absolutely support you 100%, and I can't wait for the industry to change because it needs to. Because I know a lot of women, and as soon as they get pregnant, they're like, if they're working in the industry,
Yes.
it's like, whoa, like you start thinking, wow, there's nothing in place for me. What happens when I have to work that night shift? What am I going to do? How am I going to do this? So this is so needed. And wow, so thank you so much. Now, what's the next step? Like, what do you want to see happen in the next 5 years?
In the next 5 years, again, I'd really love to see some standardized practice. Since we are state-based, I think for us it would be great to see some baseline regulations around how we move in the industry. In terms of our international cohorts, we would love to see some of the existing regulations expanded to be a bit more comprehensive and to include more of that culture of care. And so not only the product, if you will, but also what is the process and how are we making it? And I'd really love to see more studio level productions integrating this kind of practice on their sets. I'd love to see where crews really feel like they are seen and heard and validated, treated with the dignity and respect that they deserve. I'd love to see parents and caregivers who are able to work in the industry without issue, who can say, this is what I want to do, and so I'm going to do it. We see a lot of people opt out because there's no way to make it work. We see people who want to have families who choose not to because they feel there's no way to sustain both. And we'd really love to see that change and love to see that shift. And I think there's so much opportunity for it if we simply change our perception about what's possible, and that's part of our work, and that's why we lean into the data so much, so that we can really show it's not just a belief, it's not just a perception. This is what's actually happening. These are the numbers, these are the metrics, and there's measurable growth and change possible. And so in 5 years' time, I think we could see more of this cropping up, where instead of pockets of care, we're seeing, pockets of people who are not necessarily ascribing to that just yet.
Yeah, for sure. That would be amazing if that could all happen. So I'm wondering if maybe, I don't know, but there's a lot of grants, government grants that based on how many you hire on set, the point system where you shoot the film, you get more money based on location. There should be something integrated, like an incentive for a producer if you hire more moms.
Yes. We are advocating for that. Actually, we do. We have, so those incentive packages are built out. There are now green packages where if you are producing and you can prove within your safety plan that there are eco-friendly practices taking place, and you're really considering and prioritizing climate change and how these things are affecting the community you're working in and the spaces that you're embodying, inhabiting, then you get extra money. And so we feel if we can do this for climate, if we can do this for safety, in the terms of physical safety, then why are we not able to do this for psychological safety and for care practice? And so we know it's possible. And so we're working to see how we can make that the norm. Absolutely that. I love that. Yes.
Awesome. Yes, I love it too. That's amazing. I'm rooting for you, Akima. I'm behind the scenes. Let's do this. Let's do this. Comment, like, support her.
I love it. Thank
boost
you.
her up.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love it.
Where might we be now had I started, 10, 15 years ahead of when I did? I always say, be bold, be brave, go first. And that's the thing I would tell my younger self. Be bold, be brave. Go first.
Oh, this has been such a wonderful conversation and such a needed one.
I want to say again, thank you so much for having me. And to your audience, if you're listening and you are wondering how you can build out care, please feel free to visit the website, realfamilies.org. That's REEL. families.org. Feel free to reach out. I'm sure my information will be in the show notes. I'd love to hear from you and to offer you support. I think a lot of times people are very interested in making it happen. They just don't know where to start. And that's what we're here for, to help you figure out exactly where to begin. And you can also take an assessment quiz on the website. So if you go to realfamilies.org/services, you can take an assessment and you can see where you can start and we can help you build it out.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it, Akima. You're amazing. Thank you so much for what you're doing. So I guess that's a wrap for today's episode. Huge thanks to you for sharing your powerful journey and the work that you're doing to reshape our film industry. If you're interested, check out the show notes. You'll see all her information there too, if you didn't get a chance to write it down. And if you enjoyed this conversation or this subject, please leave a comment. And if you can, it really helps when you like and subscribe to the show. This is independently funded and created, so all the love is appreciated. So we've got incredible stories coming, and thank you so much for listening today. And until next time.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye.
Okay, bye. Bye. If you enjoyed our interview today, please share and like it. And if you have a unique story of how you are creatively engaging with our world, I can help you share it in a multitude of different ways. Whether it's through photography, film, or being a guest on my podcast, be sure to reach out. My mission is to make you and your brand stand out. Please visit our website, www.riseup.podcast. Now, this is Rise and Thrive with Ms. Monday, brought to you by the Rise Up and Fix It podcast.